Hey guys, welcome to Sammy's Twisted Kitchen, where today we're baking Ben & Jerry's inspired Justice Remix Brownies. If you like these twisted recipes, please like and subscribe to my channel. Today we are making brownies, but they are inspired by the Ben & Jerry's flavor Justice Remix. It recently came out a few months ago. This is not a sponsor. So the brownies are basically going to be chocolate fudge brownies. I experimented last week with this recipe. And we're going to be adding some cinnamon rolls in there. These can be homemade if you want, but I bought the store-bought ones. And then we're making them spicy because the ice cream does have spicy brownie chunks in there. So we will be adding cinnamon and cayenne pepper in there. So the recipe is basically really simple. You have your basic ingredients, your flour, your sugar, brown sugar, the cocoa powder. I'm using a nicer brand. I recommend using a higher quality cocoa powder. It just makes the brownies taste a lot better. I'm using these chocolate chips in there instead of your normal milk chocolate. I'm using these ones. They're dark chocolate. Eggs, vanilla, oil, and then I'm using a hint of chocolate milk. I'm using almond milk. I just had it in the house. Just gives the brownies an extra little chocolatey flavor in there. Okay, so first step, you're going to preheat your oven to 350. And as that's going, what I do next is I'm using an 8x8 pan for these brownies. And you're going to grease it. So you want to grease your pan while it's heating. The oven's heating. Put that aside. So our first step is to melt the butter. You can do this in the microwave. I'm just doing it over the stove. And to make it easier, always use unsalted butter because we will be adding a touch of salt in the end to kind of balance out the sweetness in the brownies. So I'm just going to cube this first. And always use a low flame. You don't want to burn your butter. The first step is to just measure out your sugars. So I'm using white sugar and brown sugar. The butter is all melted. You can see here, all melted, not burnt, not brown. We're not browning the butter. So this is our white sugar, 3/4 of a cup, brown sugar, 3/4 cup, and then our cocoa powder, 1/2 cup here. So you can hand mix this. If you're going to be using an electric mixer, do not try to fluff anything, make anything overly whipped. So I'm doing the butter first. You're going to dump that butter in there first. Just be careful, it is a little warm. So I'm taking my electric mixer on low speed and just going to make sure all the ingredients are incorporated. Again, we're not whipping it, we're just mixing things. So you will see now all the ingredients are incorporated together. Again, I stress using a higher quality cocoa powder because again, you see how nice and dark and rich that looks. So our next step now is adding 1 egg at a time in the recipe. Okay. Again, you're going to incorporate it. At this point, I would just use a spoon to mix the rest of the ingredients together because you don't want to whip anything. You want these brownies to be nice and dense. Now we're adding our 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And And I'm adding 1 tablespoon of oil. This keeps the brownies nice and gooey and moist. So now let's mix this all together. And you will notice that the batter is very thick. That is normal. Again, we want these brownies to be nice and dense. And now I'm adding 1/4 of a cup of, if you want to use regular milk, whole milk. I just like the chocolate. It gives it an extra little chocolatey flavor. Okay, so this is the batter after all the wet ingredients are mixed. You will notice it is very chocolatey and it's thick. Now we're moving on to our dry ingredients. We add these last. So we have our flour, our pinch of salt, and then we have our cinnamon and our hot pepper. All my baking recipes, I like to add a twist to them. So in this recipe, we are making like a Mexican spicy brownie and reflect the ice cream that we are inspired by in baking this. This is 1/2 cup of flour. And then we have our 1/4 teaspoon of salt. But if you do use salted butter, skip this step. And now we're using 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. If you're not a big fan of spice, I recommend going down to 1/2 teaspoon. And finally, our hot pepper. Let's just add this in there too, cayenne pepper. If you want more of a smoky Mexican brownie, you can add chili pepper in there. I'm not really looking for that flavor, so I'm just sticking with this. And again, I'm using 1/4 of a teaspoon. If you can handle the heat, go on ahead and increase it if you want. But we're not making it too spicy. We just want that little kick. And you just want to kind of fold your ingredients in. Again, do not whip this. We don't want to put any air in the batter. I would just recommend folding it in. Okay, now we're going to add 1 cup of chips. You could add walnuts in here, chocolate chips, anything that you really want, but I'm going for more of a fudge brownie. And it's 1 cup. Stir it in. And you will notice, because I added that chocolate milk in there, it's not as thick. If you do not add it, it will be even thicker. And make sure to heavily grease your baking pan. I'm always a fan of over-greasing it for brownies, just because we don't want the edges to burn. So again, you notice that the batter is very thick. This is a dense, chewy brownie, so you're not going to see it rise up at all. You'll notice if you do ever like store-bought brownie mix, it is a thinner batter, kind of like when you make a cake. So now we're going to be adding our cinnamon rolls on there. So again, these can be homemade if you want to actually make everything from scratch. Cinnamon rolls take a lot of work, so I am just using the store-bought ones. And we will be topping it with icing at the end. Make sure to set that aside. So I am going to make 4 large ones. So pretty much what I'm going to be doing is taking this and wrapping it around. And you're just going to lay that right on top like that. So what I'm actually doing now, I'm just going to take a spoon and kind of push them down a little bit into the And once that's all said and done, it is time to throw them in the oven. The brownies are done. We baked them for about 27 minutes. It kind of varies on your oven. So you can see they're nice golden brown. We're going to let these sit out, cool, and they're going to continue baking in the pan. And then once they're cool, we're going to throw them in the refrigerator, then cut them up put some icing on them, and enjoy. Okay guys, these are the brownies. They are completely cooled. I threw them in the refrigerator for about a half hour. You will notice that they did settle and the middle is not gooey anymore. So I baked them for a total of 27 minutes, cooled on the stove for about a half hour, and in the fridge for a half hour. Now you can make your own icing. Again, I'm just using the one that came with the cinnamon rolls. And then once you have all your icing on, cut them, serve them, heat them back up again. And if you want to put them with vanilla ice cream, or even with the Ben & Jerry's flavor that I was inspired by to create these brownies. This is our end result. So it can be a little difficult getting out the first brownie, but this is it. It's nice and layered. You got that gooey brownie on the bottom with the cinnamon roll right on top. Here we go. So go right in the middle. If you guys like this video and my recipe, please like and subscribe to my page.